Hello there, kind listeners and friends. I'm here to tell you to stick around to the end of the episode to hear about what will happen in the off-season. As a preview, we're going to talk about books and stories such as The Shadow over Innsmouth, Uzumaki, Souls of Darkness, At the Mountains of Madness, movies like The Thing, The Labyrinth, games like Shadow Tower, Titan Souls, Shadow Tower Abyss. We'll put those in the right order and configuration at the end, but that's just, a preview. This has been a fantastic season. We're so grateful that everybody has listened and responded as kindly as you have, and boy, we're looking forward to the future of the show here as we round out the Dark Souls series and, get to whatever is next, whatever that may be. So yeah, enjoy the episode and stick around to hear what's coming up.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
Cursed fiends, their children too. And their children forever true.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And I'm LobosJR.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a blasphemous, sinful, just a terrible, terrible favorite.
Gary, you're reading the marketing copy from our chocolate.
Yeah, blasphemous and terrible chocolates.
Yes, so sinfully
decadent.
delightful.
Yes, sinfully decadent. This is a podcast that has committed crimes against indigenous people.
Yes, and of course, we are talking about the final area of the DLC, the Fishing Hamlet, and kind of doing some cleanup on the old hunters and on Bloodborne in general. And as you heard, we're joined by LobosJR, a notable streamer on Twitch. We talk about him a lot. We bring him up as the patience elemental himself for the challenge runs. Hey, Lobos, thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Hey.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this is one of our we've had you on before, and one of our favorite guests. So thank you for coming back.
Not a problem. Anytime.
Can you speak for anybody who maybe doesn't know? Speak a little bit to your relationship with the Souls games and what you do.
Absolutely. Well, my first encounter was with Dark Souls 1. Actually, going before that, Demon Souls I picked up for a brief moment and then decided it was the worst game ever and put it down after about an hour playing it and dying to the Red-Eyed Knight in Boletaria Palace. And I said, no, this game's dumb. Fast forward 2 years later, and my friends decided to show me Dark Souls 1 and sit with me while I played through it. And I was like, okay, all right. And then, of course, I fell in love with it after continuing to play and kind of learning, it's harsh but fair. Everything is very up to you. And everything is based on your actions. So after that, I, of course, played all the subsequent games, Bloodborne, Dark Souls 2, and I got accustomed to taking this game, which is known to be very difficult, and making it even more difficult. And go figure, people like to watch that. So I kept doing that, and I still do that to this day.
Yeah. If you've heard tell of somebody doing something that only a maniac would do, Lobos is probably the person who did it. In Dark Souls and Souls.
Yeah, it's not like that guy who ate the other guy's face.
Right. Yeah.
The cool thing about the mods and stuff and the challenge runs you do is that they're I think they're really creative. Dark Souls does have kind of a built-in challenge run mentality with soul level runs and stuff. But you kind of go through and find weird mods and stuff. I remember watching Dark Souls 2, I think it was, with the Limbo mod.
The Limbo mod is cool, yeah.
Yeah, where it just turns up the contrast and everything is dark and shadowy. Things like that, little things that you wouldn't think of. When you were talking about getting into Dark Souls, I just made me think of this. Was that, when you got into it, was it before you started doing stuff on YouTube and Twitch?
I had been streaming on Twitch, but most of my content was speedrunning. So I got into speedrunning, and actually that was probably the first thing I did with Souls games was, well, I want to speedrun this now. So started speedrunning it, and then that got me a little bit better and more familiar with, I guess, just the entire world of Dark Souls 1. And then I was like, well, I mean, I'm pretty good at these fights now. I feel like I could do it with, maybe just a shield. I think my first challenge runs were like fist weapon only, and then shield only and bow only, and then it just kind of went downhill from there, like experience-wise, I guess. But
it's. I was just thinking about how it would be fun to watch if it was on video the first time you played Dark Souls. Because it's something that I associate with you just knowing inside and out. And,
when your friends locked you in that room.
Yeah,
I have 2 highlights, and one highlight is fighting the Gaping Dragon for the first time. Probably about a 30-minute fight. And he's got like 5% health left. And one of my buddies who's watching with me is just like, just go charge in there, get him. And I'm like, all right, cool. So I charge at him right as he's like slamming down on the ground. I don't get killed. I take some damage and I'm like, oh, haha, funny. And I just kind of keep mashing our right bumper. And then he just steamrolls right through me and I die and facepalm everywhere. The other highlight is actually my very first time stepping into Blighttown. I encountered the ogre enemies with the clubs and tried to battle like the first one and took a lot of damage and used a lot of Estus. And then I said, yeah, forget this. And just started running. And then my friends were kind of chuckling like, oh, you can't speed through Blighttown. Like, what are you going to do? There's only down. And I just kept dodging everything and happened to make it to the very first bonfire. And so I just kind of skipped all of that my first playthrough.
I figured it out.
Of course, I spent hours getting from that point on, but it was kind of interesting.
The people who follow kind of Souls news and stuff on the web, and one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on for the DLC is that recently a bunch of kind of sites picked up you going through all the DLC bosses with your bare hands in Bloodborne, which is these are among the hardest, if not the hardest, bosses in the game. And
they're so good.
Yeah, they're really, really good. We've been talking a lot of sugar these last couple episodes, and that will continue this episode. But man, just hands, because your hands. How do you make that work? Like I've watched the runs, but for people who are listening, so enemies that can be backstabbed, you can backstab them with a charged hand attack, bare fist attack, and then you can go in for a backstab, and that deals damage based off of your skill level and like any gems you have equipped, and like slight increase from your level from the rest of your levels as well. But with fists, I pretty much sought to max out my strength and skill to get maximum benefit for that. And you can't do that on all the bosses, of course. So that still added on to the scaling damage from just my regular fist hits, which got up to around 120-ish. It depends on the boss that I was fighting, but anywhere from 70 to 120-ish damage, especially when a boss gets injured. Just very low damage. Yeah. I remember seeing because you also end up using Beast Blood, right? Like is that correct? Yeah.
I tried that. The thing is, with such long fights and not a very fast rate of attack with the fists, you have to be very careful about doing back-to-back hits too often because you'll get in trouble. Use an extra blood vial, which might cost you way later down the line. Yeah. So once I got more familiar with fights, I would start popping it on there, but just kind of playing as if I didn't have it on. I didn't want to get more aggressive, but it did add some damage in there for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's worth watching. Like it's pretty impressive. Yeah. As somebody who specifically with both the bosses we're covering in this episode, I struggled quite a bit. Yeah. So we're super happy to have you, and cool. What did we do last time?
Well, previously, we explored the research hall and we saw the depths of the church's depravity when it came to experimenting on people, prisoners and whatnot. And we also killed the poor prisoner's warden, Lady Maria of the Astral Clock Tower. And now it is time to step back in time to find out kind of what's at the root of this. What was the original sin that inspired all of the madness that we've seen so far?
Yes. Yep. Gonna go back in time. after we kill Maria, we get this celestial dial from the lamp. And, this lets us know that the clock tower itself was used to interpret the stars, not to mark the passage of time.
Right.
So it's not it's a clock tower. It's just a name. Mm-hmm. It's like John Clock Tower, the guy who delivers my paper. He does not keep time.
It's a memorial to John Clock Tower.
Yes. Of the New Hampshire clock towers.
Yes. And that explains its strange performance. This is the clock tower that we see in the promotional art for the old hunters, and the hunter that we see kind of hunched over, that's Maria herself. But this kind of has these holes cut out of it so that it can align and show you where the different planets are and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So after we walk up with this thing, the dials spin, and the interior clock hands kind of align to resemble a hunter's mark.
Yeah, it's like a peace sign a little bit. It doesn't have the bottom stroke.
On the outsides of the clock are different runes, and the bottom one lines up to the deep sea rune. Mm-hmm. And then the bottom hole starts glowing, and we can step in to like a totally different biome. Like, did you guys expect this? Like, I was not expecting to enter into a marsh.
I was personally kind of like, well, that was the DLC. That was fun. And then, what?
It's just going to be a void
area?
Me too. When I saw the first guy, the first NPC who's non-aggressive, I thought it was like a coda. Like, I thought I was in an area that was not going to be based on gameplay or combat or anything. Yeah. But not the case.
Yeah, definitely. I love how surreal this is, because as you step down, you look behind you and you see that the tower is like sunk into the water, and like all around you can see this familiar sight of these ship's masts kind of sticking out from the water itself. And it's like something out of like Inception or like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Just this impossible kind of world geometry. Like, this is not how it should work. Yeah.
Or something like out of the Iron Keep. Jackals. so mad at the elevator.
Oh, we got a little bit of that shit today too.
Yeah. No, so it's okay when Bloodborne does it.
It's a nightmare, so piece together whatever.
It's dreamy weemy.
Yeah, so Dark Souls 1 had timey-wimey, Dark Souls 2 had spacey wacy. Bloodborne is dreamy weemy. What is Dark Souls 3 going to be? Like, what are we going to use to hand wave?
It's going to depend on whatever like design thing only kind of makes sense, or whatever we have to use to patch over story stuff. That sounds dismissive, but like it's like I accept the dreamy weemy.
Whatever rhyming nonsense we have to say to quiet the whales inside of our head.
Yeah.
And so yes, I love the surreality of this moment as you're like stepping down this ramp. I did not expect it. I didn't expect it to end in such a humble yet sinister place, because everything so far has been like, we start out in a gutter and we're at the very top of kind of the world of Yharnam, right? And then we step out into something that is just in a different world entirely. And that's even underlined by the fact that it's raining here when it doesn't elsewhere.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also just kind of dingier and grosser in a way that up until this point there's a lot of kind of opulence, like specifically when you go into the Astral Clock Tower. Mm-hmm. Like, it's very beautiful, and it looks like the statuary and everything, like it looks like, and when we were downstairs in kind of the church hospital with the really elaborate statues with the gems and kind of gold inlaid.
The filigree. Yeah,
kind of things. And that contrast, especially once you actually find out what happens, ends a weird kind of classism angle to this that I wasn't expecting.
Easy now. We get in trouble for that kind of talk around these parts.
Yeah, it's all right. It's in the text. Like, it's in the game. Like, that is what happened. So it has had that feeling to it. It's like, this feels like people like experimenting on, the like poor people in Appalachia or something like that.
Yeah.
To me.
Definitely. Like, this is the humble beginnings. And I know I've used that word a lot, but it's just it kind of underlines all of this, underscores it rather.
Let's talk about this guy.
Yeah, so you kind of walk up this path that is strewn with bodies, and there are these cairns around. Like, they couldn't find enough ways to mark the resting places of people who were just kind of in the most shallow of graves. And there's this shambling cloaked figure. We can't really see anything about him, but he is kind of pacing back and forth, and he is uttering just these incantations, these curses, right? And this kind of could be seen as a little bit of the source of the timey-wiminess of all of the dialogue that we've seen so far. The fact that everything is kind of set in these really basic couplets. That's kind of the cadence and meter that he uses as he mumbles quite obviously out of his mind.
Yeah. Oh. And there's a lot of kind of important information to this. We'll get more of the context a little bit later, but the main idea being that he's laying a curse essentially on somebody who has done something to a child, to a poor wizened child. A curse and the curse spans generations. It goes on and on, children and children's children and children's children, until he mentions the sweet child of Kos, Return to the Ocean. Kos, who is barely a footnote in the main game, turns out to be so important here.
Yeah.
Really, really surprised at that.
Yeah. One of my favorite phrases in the game is here, let the pungence of Kos cling like a mother's devotion. Because so much of what we've seen so far is kind of related to motherhood. And like this, again, is at the root of it all.
Yeah. Either you guys try to kill this guy?
Immediately.
Yeah. Yes.
First thing, I saw talking and I was like, that might just be like introductory, I'm going to kill you, dialogue. And I just attacked him. But I don't think he does anything, right? He just keeps walking.
Yeah, he's immortal.
Yeah.
He's you can actually knock him using the beast roar. You can knock him off the platform, and he still lives down there. Yeah, he just walks around down on the kill box.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, no, I let him be. I tried to decide whether or not it would be a mercy killing. Yeah. And I ultimately decided it would not be. So. Yeah,
I ultimately did on my way out. Tried to kill him. I let him be, but when I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna be done with Bloodborne for a little bit. Let's see, what I can do. Did that. You can come back to this guy later after getting one of the 2 transformation runes we're going to talk about, the Milkweed rune, and he gives you kind of different dialogue, but he gives you a really important item, lore-wise.
Yeah, this is up there with one of the most important linchpin item descriptions of any of the items we've seen in any of the games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a smoking gun. It's a smoking skull. The accursed brew, which is lets you. They're grenades. Which is kind of cool from a gameplay perspective. But the biggest thing is this is a skull of one of these villagers that shows evidence of people literally scraping the inside of it looking for eyes.
Yeah. Yeah, they have been trepanned like crazy, and you can see this. It's kind of like the skull lantern a little bit from the previous games. So it's kind of wrapped up so you can carry it really easily, but it's filled with holes, and this even kind of repeats one of the couplets that this kind of befuddled villager says, which is, "They who offer baneful chance weep with them as one in trance." Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so just the idea that this horrible, tragic thing is, evidence, like it's what he's clinging to as kind of part of his, ritual, right? He only gives it to you if you use the milkweed, which we got last episode, which turns you into a lumen wood, which is associated with Kos and with kind of the children, these parasites. Yeah. And so he sees you as at least the way that I read it, you guys can disagree with me. He sees you as kind of an ally, like somebody who is coming, to help bring some kind of reconciliation.
Oh, for sure. If it's a village of people who worship this great one, and you kind of come through of the stars and of the great ones yourself.
Yeah.
This is the alien transformation that you can become in the game. So yeah, I think that's, you kind of fool them that way. Like, joke's on you, sucker. I'm not gonna knock you into a pit. But yeah, this item is really important. And it's really easy to miss.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have a reason to come back here with the milkweed rune, and unless you're built for it, the milkweed rune, it's not super powerful unless you have a very kind of specific build.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's head into the village.
Yeah, down Fishman Street. I didn't notice the fixture that was hanging next to the lamp until it was pointed out.
The hanging man.
Yeah.
There,
it
was hung like a hunter symbol.
Yep. Except with one important difference. The head is gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. But my eyes kind of glossed over it. But that is, we have a response from Riff from Video Games Hot Dog, which says it's probably the most effective way they could scream "keep out."
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like it'd be like if you and I tried to go to a conference or something, and then we went in and there were just a bunch of podcasters with their heads removed. Like, I recognize the torso of Jesse Thorne. It's Adam Carolla's chest with no head, and we would just know like not to go in there because
YouTubers only.
Yeah. Yeah.
They call us Mikeys. Continue. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It takes a little while before you start running into enemies here too, which is part of the reason why I felt like this was a non-aggressive area. But then you're introduced to these new enemies, these fishmen, these Innsmouth, 12th level Innsmouth brides. They are fighting. Mike, can you talk a little bit to like your first experience when you got into the village, or how you kind of approached this, or what you were thinking?
Yeah, I believe you go and you see an item and you pick it up, and I think it's some blood vials or something like that, and then immediately like a fishman nearby like kind of stands up from the water, and my immediate reaction was, oh great, murlocs, and deal with all these fishmen, and you just kind of fight the one at first, and then as you progress you see that they're kind of littered throughout the pathway, and they're wielding spears, and they can toss them from a distance, and kind of a different enemy type than I've come to expect from Bloodborne. Although there's not really a regular type that you can say, for that. But it was interesting to see certainly a watery area and kind of fish-based enemies around there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they mix them up a lot, more than they do in some other areas of Bloodborne. Like a lot of times in Bloodborne, they'll have like one ranged attacker. But here you have the spears mixed with the dogs, mixed with the fish, mixed with the casters. Yeah, a lot of times. So it's like a much more complicated mix.
It's kind of funny how the DLC does that. Like they use every part of the fish buffalo because all three areas have kind of this base template enemy that they offer a bunch of variations on. So the Nightmare has the old hunters, the Research Hall has the patients, and then this has kind of these different flavors of fishmen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These slads. Or Sagans. Like these are all kinds of D&D enemies. Yeah.
Kind of around us. Oh, okay. Actually, I want to take this back. Why are they fishmen?
I think
because the skull is human. Like when the atrocity was committed, these people had human-like skulls.
Mm-hmm. I thought about that a little bit. I think that one, these are the remainders of the people in the village. Mm-hmm. So I think of it, in terms of like Shadow over Innsmouth, like where it's possible that a progressive kind of corruption or transformation is taking place. So the people who are left are the strongest and kind of the warriors. Yep. Like the people who could fight back against the church, and the people who are human or who are kind of human on the inside, skull-wise or what have you, were the ones who fell.
Before they could transform, like before they
because I think that they transform because of the presence of Kaz. Yep. And these slugs is having this kind of like corrupting influence on them. Even though they loved it, so who am I to call it? That's awfully
very normative.
Corrupting. Yeah, it's very normative. It's very, but it is. I was thinking of it as this corruption. The other thing being is that it could be nightmariness. Like we could be seeing their dream forms, which are these kind of half Great One, half humans, but in real life they were humans. Yeah, who worshipped the fish god thing.
Yeah. I could see that too. Like it might be a combination of most of them. Although the Dream One does kind of like exposure to the Nightmare does warp and transform people. We saw that with the students, with the Goop students. I don't know. I kind of like the idea that this is kind of a different flavor of beast transformation, and that Kos is kind of like helping them fight off the invasion a little bit, because when we're in this area we can actually see like nothing here is like taken care of. The village is flooded. Everything is kind of just carpeted with barnacles up and down. Everything is in complete disrepair, and I kind of wonder if they, like the denizens of Innsmouth, kind of leave behind their old cares a little bit, once that's all that's left.
Yeah, I think that is, there it's becoming one with this other. The village, like all the things that are the human houses and stuff, and these human concerns are no longer important in the face of this kind of transcendence that they're going for. It's hard for me to think of it as a version of the beast plague. Like I can see what you mean. I can see what that is, but it's benign.
Yep.
Like it is, and we've never seen the beast plague be anything other than just ruin. This is in a way, it's kind of like the successful version of merging with these outer kind of transcendent greater gods.
Yeah.
It's like the peaceful, non-resistant way, as opposed to both like the churches and the colleges way.
Yeah.
Which neither of which worked out.
Yeah.
Worked out great. This is kind of like the god came to them and kind of adopted them,
like rewarded their devotion. This is the transformation as the goal, possibly.
Yeah.
As opposed to the nasty side effect that we try and hide and brush under the table, quite literally.
Yeah. Yeah. So you continue making your way up through the village. You run into this well here with these casters that are essentially turrets. To kind of make these combat encounters a little bit more complicated here. And there's a well. I think we should kind of cover the well a little bit later.
Okay.
Because as soon as I started climbing down the well, I went back because there were winter lantern noises down there. I was like, no, I'm okay missing this. Yeah. But you're introduced to what many have called, and I possibly agree, the hardest single enemy in the game, or at least a non-boss enemy, are these fish ogres that you fight.
Can you give us some pro tips on the fish ogres?
Yeah, how do you fight fish ogres, Mike?
Shaman Bone Blade.
Oh, yeah.
Shaman Bone Blade, and they will fight each other. That's what I'm told. I actually have never done it myself. And I did kill them with my fists, but you can backstab them and kill them in like 2 backstabs. I mean, it wasn't easy, and I don't really have a strategy. Just kind of circle around them and dodge good. They're pretty tough.
Dodge them up real good.
Yep.
They're like slip and slide attack.
Yeah.
Like they're like beaching themselves attack is one of my favorite animations in the game.
Everything about them is so goofy. They're instant kill if they kind of catch you off guard, do their grapple. They pick you up and they swallow you whole.
Yeah.
Head first. It's like the covetous demon.
It's like a cartoon cat eating a cartoon fish.
You expect them to pull your skeleton out?
Pull a skeleton out by your foot and dangle you in front of Heathcliff's weird, like, rapping friend on roller skates.
Riff Raff?
Yeah, Riff Raff. There we go. It is very super goofy. But pretty great. Like, these guys, I like these guys. They're real gross to look at. They look uncomfortably moist. In fact, that's like this whole village.
Yeah.
Like, pretty moist.
So has anybody got a dehumidifier? Something like that? Where would you empty it?
Into Kos.
Yes. Bottomless Kos.
Yes.
But yeah, these guys, they use them sparingly, which is nice. Although later they get anchors, which somebody gave them heavy metal things. I don't know why they did that.
Yep. So we get a couple more little details about the village here. There's some kind of I know that Richard, the Jerk Son Frontier guy, who in his video where he talks about this being a whaling village, potentially, and that's why they have all these jars of oil, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
because there are jars of flaming oil everywhere, and they will use these against you as traps, and you can use it against them as well.
Yeah.
But this area uses its environment pretty well at this point. The level, like I get kind of irritated with a couple specific encounters a little bit later in this area, but in this one, like I'm still super on board.
Yeah,
with how that works.
I love this detail. You can pick up like an oil urn, like a consumable item, in one of these canoes that has a body resting in it, which kind of lends to mind either the idea of lighting those like candles and sending them out, or lighting them on fire like a Viking funeral. Like just something to be done to get rid of the bodies that are just kind of mounting up, so they don't kind of rest in the streets covered by these silver leeches or worms.
Yeah.
And then while you're thinking about that, one of the guys from off in the distance chucks a firebomb at you and ends your sojourn through there.
It's set up with traps for if you start thinking about and looking at the environment too much, guys are going to kill you for it. which is thematically really sound. Like, stop trying to examine this area, outsider.
Kind of stepping back a little bit, I really like the reveal of the giant fishman, because you're just kind of walking past that building and it like comes around the corner. And the first thing is like, well, I got to get away from that. So you start sprinting. And then most of the time you're at a distance. So it uses the little slip and slide attack.
Yeah.
And you just turn around and immediately are dead.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay.
Face full of sashimi. Like,
Yeah, and he's definitely tucked back in that little blind alley there, and it's backed by that kind of useless shortcut that lets you skip a total of like 3 enemies, I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's super great. As you continue moving up to this little cliffside area as you're heading to it, and we're skipping over a lot of individual encounters, but this area is very dense with enemies. Which is one of the things that I'm not super crazy about it, especially a little bit later once you get to the area with the kind of bridges, where I just felt like, boy, like here I'm fighting 20 things. It just felt like really easy to get overwhelmed and stunlocked to death, which we talked a lot about on the show. But here it's it still kind of works, but it's starting to get denser and denser as we approach the actual boss here to this kind of cliffside area where there's this house at the end, which we can't get into just yet, or we can get into and get through, but we can't actually do very much with.
No, we have to go outside. All of the doors inside of it are locked. There's a cliffside path around. Prior to this, there's an encounter that I want to make sure we don't gloss over. The fishman chopping at the body by the shortcut. With his cleaver. Yep. This is another weapon that some of them will start using against you, and it especially makes them kind of able to knock you over so they can do these really strong attacks. But he's chopping at this body, and you go there and you look at it and you find out that this is the Harrowed Hunters set, which is part of what Simon is wearing. And it turns out that the church was kind of disguising their hunters as beggars to go out into the street to look for the first signs of Scourge, which they could just counterfeit.
Yes.
And so the idea that like this was a beggar that the village kind of took in kind of use as that the church used as their first kind of inroads to kind of get them. Although the church obviously came later, but
yeah,
sure.
The idea still holds.
Which and explains a lot about why how the common people react to you when you show up in the main game, like how no one will let you in. No one's opening their doors for you, because they have a reason to be paranoid. Like the church at this point, like this is one of the, there are many examples of this, but this is a real example of the church being actively antagonistic to the citizens. There's a whole old Yarnum, like, it's very antagonistic to its citizens, but this is another thing. Like they're really we said it a bunch, but like people in Bloodborne are assholes. Like all of the organizations in this are the absolute worst. Like, these are the worst people we've seen in a Souls game. Like, ugh.
I was having a conversation in Slack today with some listeners, and just the idea that, and the lead up to Bloodborne, hearing that it was going to be this Victorian setting, and we talked a lot in the first episode. Like, I'm kind of worried this is going to be steampunk. They kind of get around the like, we're going to present this awesome high flying tale of adventure about how cool it is to be white and rich. The steampunk thing, just by making it the worst possible world.
Yeah, just the grossest people doing the worst things.
Yeah,
yeah.
They really make the most of that setting.
Yep. So we're introduced to more fishmen here, past the lighthouse, casters, and then also fish dogs. Like, who is Fish Dog?
This is the path up to the lighthouse. We haven't actually gotten to the lighthouse yet. There's a whole like cliff run.
Yeah. It's been, I haven't played through this again, partly because I kind of ran through it to refresh my memory a little bit, but also I wish there were ascetics so I could fight the bosses again and do the area again without replaying the game.
Yeah.
So I'm still kind of going off of mostly my first playthrough memory. So forgive me if I get some of the areas mixed up. But
yeah, this is this is a real kick in the balls. At least I thought it was the first time that I played it. This kind of run up the as they kind of, again, very dense with enemies and these dogs. Like, how do you deal with the dogs, especially with no weapons?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even most of the areas you just kind of speed run through because get to the boss, kill the boss. That's what's important, sort of. But even then, those dogs they do that AoE scream and they stun you while those like 3 fishmen are aiming spears to chuck at you, and like the spellcaster guy is like shooting those purple skulls your way, and then even if you manage to sprint past that, there's one of those fishmen hiding behind the corner just waiting to slip and slide into you. Mm-hmm. It's pretty brutal gauntlet there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's one of the more brutal set piece kind of parts of the game, and just continues. Like as you get to this next area that's over the village proper, is also full of these like pretty difficult little encounter designs.
Yeah.
And when we get to the lighthouse, we find our buddy Simon, who like seems like a relatively good guy until now that we realized he's one of these like beggar murderers. But he's dying. And he says something that we'll kind of figure out here in a minute, where he says, "I can hear the bell now. The beast's hide assassin is after me." And he says, like, continue pushing through the village. That's what I've been trying to kind of go on to doing in order to end this nightmare so the hunters don't have to suffer forever. And not to put this on you, Cole, since it's your edit, but the dialogue where he talks about, and you can cut out me saying this, but where he says,
"Please, I need you to do something. This village is the true secret, testament to the old sins. It feeds this hunter's nightmare. Please, bring to an end the horror, so our forefathers sin. We hunters cannot bear their weight forever. It isn't fair. It just isn't fair."
Hearing him on the edge of tears when he says that.
Yeah, his heart kind of breaks during it. And it's really, as much as we were just talking about how terrible and shitty these people are, but like, the punishment is, like it's a terrible, terrible, terrible crime. And perhaps the punishment is actually even more, maybe it is too much.
There's no room for atonement. And we see as we go through this, like most of the lucid people that we find are seeking some kind of atonement, right? Mm-hmm. As they are attempting to get to the center of this. And he is kind of your companion in that. Like he's offering you advice and he is following you along until his tie with the church and the fact that, he has the secret that needs to be kind of covered up works against him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he drops the bow blade, which is next time I end up playing Bloodborne, I'm going to make a speed run to kill this guy and get the blow blade because I want to try that. Didn't have the stats for it in my playthrough of this, which is kind of a bummer. But I definitely want to check it out. And then you also get the underground cell inner key.
Yes.
Which is it's a cell that holds a lone madman who wears a beast hide and rings a bell that emits no sound. That's a good sentence. Unending death waits those who can hear the soundless bell. Also pretty metal. Yeah. So we can head back and figure out what's going on now.
Yeah.
So kind of church jail section.
So this ends up being a little bit of cleanup, right? Because there's some stuff that we haven't seen. Like there were those cells that we couldn't really get into before. And then there's the small matter of that big beast. But let's kind of pursue this line of inquiry to go after this soundless bell. And we talked to him before. He asked us, in the cells right after the corpse pile, if we could hear the bell, and if we said yes, he said, "Oh, you're lying to me, obviously." So such japes will not find you purchase here. And if you say no, he says, "Oh, but you will soon." When you go back to this area, having kind of seen, he only spawns after you light the lamp in the lighthouse. So you've seen kind of what's happened here. You know the secret, and so you can hear the bell now.
Yeah.
And here he is.
Yep. And we can go back and take care of him, which we're going to talk about. But if you don't, he invades you a bunch of times. He invades you 4 times, and they are devious invasions by Soulsborne kind of standards. He uses the lead elixir to wonderful effect, way better than I can. Yeah. Like whenever I try to use that, it doesn't help me at all. Yeah. But it just destroys me when he uses it. And fights you like on like really narrow bridges. He ambushes you after you pick up an item. as well. He like works in concert with these kind of fish ambushes to straight up murder you. But instead, let's go back to a cell and TC some B. So first, there's this Yamamura who's at the end of the hallway, and there's so little to this guy.
Yeah,
this feels like it's something that was planned for something bigger.
He kind of mirrors you a little bit. Like he's a bit of a kind of an example of what would happen to somebody from your position, because he's a foreigner who came here kind of seeking something, in his case, revenge, and he kind of got in deep with the Hunter organization, but the impurity of it kind of drove him mad. So as opposed to kind of going deeper into the mania, he decided to go the other way and ended up being locked in this cell because really it was all he could do to even just stand up and bang his head into the wall and repeat this curse.
Yeah, I mean, that feels like kind of a stretch to me. That is similar to your character. Like he's just another person from the league who are the constables or what have you, which gets like so little expansion on. I don't feel like that was intentionally a thematic parallel to your own character. Also, his weird Eastern name, like and his weird. It just kind of feels like a weird one-off. Like there's just nothing to it. There's nothing to him. We get like one paragraph of stuff. Yeah. With this guy, and it just there's not enough there for me to feel like he's significant. It feels like a dangling thread to me, at the very least. But it's fine to with all due respect. I didn't mean to shut you down as harshly as I definitely did.
I mean, it's there. What's kind of interesting about his one of his descriptions, again, we're getting some color on the church, is the fact that he has these hand wrappings that the hunters wore to kind of keep the beast contagion from spreading to them, even though it was heresy to say that the beast contagion was contagious.
Yeah, and it's another example of people doing like weird superstitious little rituals to protect from the beast plague, because there's people who are using metal specifically to try to guard against it in an earlier armor description. So people knew about this thing, and the idea that like everyone knows about it, the citizenry can actually actively try to avoid it, but people who have to kind of toe the party line can't talk about it openly, but still engage in these little like discreet rituals to try to protect themselves is super cool.
Yeah.
But as you go in, you get invaded by this character again, or for another time, fourth time here, who is Brador, who cuts a really striking silhouette.
This is some good fashion souls right here.
Yeah. He's wearing a cleric beast hat.
Yep.
It's like the hat you got for pre-ordering Scribblenauts, except for killing the cleric beast.
Yeah. And also a cloak. Like he is kind of donning himself in bestial wares. Like this is the sartorial equivalent of Mikolash howling.
Yeah.
It feels like. And he's using this again, contributing to his silhouette. He's using this bastard of an item.
Yeah.
Yeah, this not the lead elixir, although that is a bastard as well. But this blood letter. Like I don't know how to deal with this thing.
Yeah. This was definitely a tough fight for me, and I haven't used the blood letter in PvP, but I guess it is kind of like a PvP troll item, is my understanding. The description is interesting. It talks about how it being a way to like purify the blood, or to like the accepted way to let impure blood out.
Yeah, well, that's what Brador believed, and like that's the trick for it when it transforms. It kind of looks like when Maria charges up her items a little bit, where the blood extends it. Like this makes the spikes longer and stuff. And Brador believed that this was the only way to get the tainted blood out. So it wasn't just drawing blood from him wholesale. It was specifically a way for him to kind of get out the poison.
Yes. And this guy is an assassin. So his whole point is to protect this secret, and stop people, including yourself, from getting there. And again, now that you know the secret, you are a mark. I love this moment, and I'm glad you brought it up in the notes. I'm glad you noticed it. When you come back here and you notice the two enemies, because I've died since then, and I've rested at bonfire, so they should be alive, but they are dead, kind of permanently as set pieces now. Because Brador has escaped and killed them. Yeah, super cool.
Another thing about this Brador encounter, at least right here in the hallway, is that you can't draw him into the corpse pile. Like if you try and get him to a more favorable position, he will stick around right here. so that you kind of always have to fight him in this position that is very unfavorable to you.
Yeah, the choke point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you go and talk to him, because he's just sending projections every time he rings this bell, he appears to you, and when he kills you, he says, "Unending death awaits those who kind of look into this secret." Right? But you go and talk to him, and he basically says, like, "All right, you got me. What are you gonna do? What's it gonna be then? Are you going to kill me, or are you going to let me be?"
Yeah, and we're gonna kill him because he's a bastard.
Yeah.
I love this idea because in the cell he's non-aggressive. Like you can never fight the real Brador. He doesn't want to fight. Like he's non-aggressive to you here. And I love this idea of him sending out this kind of avatar of himself through this. Like it's such a cool idea for like a PvP item. It almost feels Gravelordy to me. Like if you could send, instead of you being active, like you could send copies, like AI versions of your character build.
Oh, like your build?
Yeah, into other worlds. That's the first thing I thought of, is like, why can't I get this bell and like do Bloodborne Gravelord shit and just make the goofiest fucking looking character and like just send, like naked gunmen into other people's worlds to like,
oh gosh,
fail.
Yeah, like if you had to fight really hard to like get to like this like shrine or something where you defeated a boss to write your name on it. Like you got his tooth or something, so you could write your name into it, and you were frozen in that moment in time and sent into other people's worlds.
That's a pretty cool idea.
Fuck yeah, super
cool. If you don't kill Brador, he, like I said, he invades you a bunch of times, so it's recommended to do so.
It's similar to Nevlon, actually, from Dark Souls 2.
Yeah, he's the like Lautrec doesn't do this, but I got Lautrec vibes as well. Yeah, as this kind of character who is initially non-hostile, but who's actually going to keep fucking with you. Yeah, we already have a Lautrec in the beggar, but this is kind of like feels a little bit like that too. Yeah. We also, if we head back to the church, and we could have got this before, but there's kind of some trick things you can do with the elevator. In the church to get down below into a secret chamber.
I couldn't believe this. I can't believe that I missed this detail, because the shrine that you bring up. So we talked a lot about the shrine with the mitre and the book and the bell. But below that, what comes up where you find Lawrence's skull is actually the shrine from the real world.
Yes.
and I didn't notice that until I just by chance happened to walk through that cathedral.
Pedro's there.
Yep.
It is from the real world. And I love how they hide this, because we talked about the main shrine with the body on the table and the beast under the desk or whatever, under the gurney. And that can kind of be some subtle signaling that like, hey, beast below, because you head down there and get the skull, which is pretty cool. And we find Lawrence's skull, but it's his real human version. That's like his dream kind of saved copy of his human skull before he turned into a beast and it exploded open.
Yeah. It got wormed out. Yeah.
Yeah. So we can head back to the place where we got the key to get up that elevator to fight Lawrence, which I couldn't beat on my own. Like this is the other boss I had to get help for, because I think this is really hard.
Lawrence, the first victor. I had to put in the cue there so we could put in the music.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. God, this guy's a son of a bitch. I'm not ashamed to say that I have not beaten him.
Did you? What did you think? What was your take on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's initially you start fighting him and you're like, oh, okay, it's like Cleric Beast 2.0. But the problem is all the openings that were there on Cleric Beast and the less significant damage that Cleric Beasts do that you could just kind of take in the face. Now, like, they two-shot you, and you have to be really good with your timing because there's lingering hitboxes from these explosions when he slams the ground and stuff like that. A lot of familiar abilities, of course, but they have a lot of really interesting new abilities that completely catch you off guard, like when he just completely dives forward, and then, of course, the whole second phase.
Yeah, because he gets stronger without legs.
Yeah.
And generally, I tend to follow the more leg equal more strong kind of way of life. You know,
Yeah,
like I
that's
hope
why
one day to have multiple legs. I think that centipedes are among God's greatest creatures.
Yeah, that's why the centipede demon was the hardest boss in Dark Souls.
Yeah, and it's nature's all-star. The
I forgot about that. Oh my god,
that's a scorpion actually, but you can get any animal if you want to get the. Just so you know what we're talking about, Lobos. There's a T-shirt company called the Animal Den.
Okay.
Where you get these, like, you just kind of choose an animal and it sells you merchandise related to that animal. And I've got a shirt that it's in a baseball font, like a jersey, and it says Scorpions, Nature's All-Star under it. And then that's it. Like, there's no picture of a scorpion, but I'm sure you could get it with a centipede as well. and now I get spam from them that's like, new scorpion products in stock. Stock up on scorpion gifts for Christmas. Like, I got an email that said stock up on scorpion gifts for Christmas.
I love the idea that somebody wrote that mail merge.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yes, but he does get stronger. So his opening his opening half is like the cleric beast, but when he loses his legs, he's always had kind of this fire aspect to him, and it works into his attacks. But when he loses his legs, he does these terrible, and by terrible I mean like in the wrath of God kind of sense, these terrible fire AoEs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really tough. He also has that kind of area control thing because he leaves lava around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I misremembering that? Or is that?
Yeah, he's got a lava attack in second phase for sure.
Yeah, I think he leaves it around, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, I've only been able to.
It's
fight
kind of Quelag,
Yeah, he's got some Quelag to him. I found him really hard. I ended up getting help and fighting him with help and doing fine, but without help I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
I just got murdered. It was also the last thing I did in the DLC, and I was, like I was pretty ready to be, I wanted to be done with it. So I also probably, if I could have kept trying, I might have, or would have kept trying, I might have been able to do it. But you get one of the coolest rewards for fighting this guy though, for an optional boss, which is the Beast Embrace rune. Which makes sense that he would have this as like kind of the head of the church. If even though in the last episode we talked about how there's a little bit of kind of shade thrown at this idea that it's a straight up dichotomy, or duology between mind and beasthood, insight and beast, as if there was some crossover. But if you consider Lawrence to be kind of the ultimate extension of the beast branch, like the blood branch of the evildoers, it makes sense that he gives you the Beast Embrace rune because he is as far down that path as you can be. Right. Which is another transformation rune and turns you into a weird tentacle-headed like Rasta werewolf.
Yeah, it turns you into a cleric beast of your own. And this is kind of the rune they stumbled upon. Remember, these runes are transcriptions of sounds that cannot be otherwise described, and gives you this beastly appearance. But it also kind of, when you pair this with the beast claws, gives you a new moveset. So you remember the hunter that we fought back by Nightmare Gilbert's house. Mm-hmm. This is what he was. This is what he was on.
Yes, this is the drug that he was taking, and that moveset's really fun. I would like to do a werewolf playthrough of this game too because it's pretty great. Yeah. I know you've done a broccoli-headed playthrough. Mike, have you done a beast playthrough yet?
So I started to do a beast playthrough, and it actually changes like your invulnerability frames on your dodges.
Mm-hmm.
And
weird.
At the time that I found that out, I was kind of, I don't want to deal with that. Like, that's basically relearn all the timings for the attacks. So
does it extend?
I took it
them?
off, and I kept doing just the beast claws normally. But I definitely played around with it for a bit, and it's got like that kind of air leap attack that's pretty cool. It can actually backstab if you hit somebody in the back. Some cool stuff you can do with the new transformations.
Mm-hmm. How exactly does it change the iframes? Because everything I read said that it extends them. Does it shift them? Does it just like universally change your...
I don't know if it's less or more. Mm-hmm. All I know is I was playing through with the rune and everything was fine and dandy. I got to Vicar Amelia and I just could not dodge any of her attacks. And I was baffled. I was baffled. Like her slam that creates the shockwave... my timing for that was completely off, and I did not know until somebody mentioned that it changes your frames. And so I said, "Well, okay, let's test this." And I took it off, and everything was back to normal. So whether it shifts it that I would actually be need to dodge sooner, either way, that it affected me enough that I didn't really want to continue with it. But I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Huh. It also changes your ability to use like anti-beast runes as well. Not runes, but gems. Like it changes the equation for vulnerabilities on the enemy side too.
Interesting.
At least according to the wiki that I read when I was doing research on this.
Sure.
Yep.
Kind of as a aside to that, I really enjoy the broccoli man, the milkweed rune transformation dodges. They're just so groovy. Just slides and stylish, man. I don't know.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of? The way we have this a little bit later, but it reminds me of the way that the leech zombies in Resident Evil 0 move. Like how everything is just kind of like liquid and wormy.
Yeah, very fluid
And chill.
Yeah. I want to let's work that into the lexicon. Wormy is another euphemism for chill.
Like getting wormy.
Yeah. No.
You want to go over to my house and get wormy?
I'm just worming out, you know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
just wormy and chill. Like,
Yeah.
Netflix, wormy and chill.
Yeah. It's like a trio of demons or something like that. Oh man.
Yeah. The skull implies that there's a little bit of regret in Lawrence, at least in the dream version, because if you ascribe to the idea that the bloodletting beast that we fight in the labyrinth is kind of the version of him that was kind of thrown into the oubliette. This dream idealized version still cannot reunite with his skull, and the idea that he only wakes up when you bring it to him. The description talks about how he kind of like seeks it but will never get back kind of his humanity because he threw it all away, his humanity as kind of manifested by his memories. And just the idea that like it's a symbol of everything he kind of failed to protect. So it kind of implies that at least he began with some good intentions.
Yeah. I mean, I think that most of the monsters in this have good intentions.
Yeah.
It's just good intentions don't fix skulls. Like
yep, intention in one hand and blood in the other.
Exactly. Yep. Scraping tools. So let's go back to the village. So we continue through. We get to the top of the path, and you look down, and you can see actually from this little overlook that has a little grave with a lumen flower on it, which is a cool little set piece that I don't know who this is here, but you can actually see the emboss, like a big white wilted creature on the beach, and you don't really know how important this is going to be just yet, but it's going to be very important.
Yeah, this just looks like somebody like luged on the on the beach. Like, yeah, it's very unsettling even from this high point of view. At least it was for me.
Yeah,
interesting. I didn't catch that angle my first playthrough, or any of my playthroughs, honestly.
Oh.
Yeah, he's down there. He's just waiting for you.
I'm not sure if that's skybox or if you're actually seeing all the way across the level to it.
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, this kind of begins your descent down the other side of this cliff that you ran up with all those enemies on top of you, and you have a bit of a brief reprieve until you get on these rooftops and these bridges, and it really behooves you to go and take care of Brador. At this point, like I think that getting that key from Simon is really like them saying, you know what, go take care of this. Because Brador's first invasion here was a real wall for me until I figured out how to I beat him once and then he kept coming back, unlike most of these other kind of like big mini boss hunter fights, and it really drove me to go take care of this.
Yeah. Yep. It's super tough. Partly because of these mages, the lightning summoning mages, which what they do is they cast a spell on you where lightning strikes from above. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out how to deal with this, which is just have something above you, but I would just kind of get hit and just was like, why am I getting hit? What is doing this? Like, why does this keep happening? And it drive me nuts. So eventually it ended up working out and I was fine with it. But at first, I had a really hard time fighting these dudes. You can also fall down here. This is where you can fall down, and the game wants you to. It is a trap, to fall down and fight all the fish people in the world. It is just like a fish dog, fish person, fucking fish all fish fry, all you can eat jamboree, like down on Slime Town. Like it was driving me crazy. Like every time I'd fall down, mostly from fighting Brador, like I would just land and there'd just be infinite enemies. I just get stun locked to death over and over and over. And this is the first part of the DLC where I'm like, I find this really frustrating and not that fun. This specific stretch here,
Sure.
Above the tunnels. Once you get in the tunnels, A-okay. But this part of the village bums me out.
I've played through the DLC probably, a bunch of times, and I think I've only like thoroughly gone through that area maybe twice, including my first playthrough, because there's not a whole lot interesting, and it's just a lot of stuff to deal with.
Yeah. Like skipping it or running past it is definitely viable and smart.
Yeah, I never fell down there. Like I never got the punishment version of that. Like you can climb down. Like, or I guess it's the path that you would otherwise climb up. And so I went down there because my heuristic is to go down before I go up, because up usually means progress. And that's the case here too. And so I went down there and I was kind of a little bit underwhelmed that all I got was upgrade materials and gems, which just kind of, is the chaff that Bloodborne kind of throws at you in lieu of giving you more information. And so it's a little bit of an anticlimax either way.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the exact opposite happened with me. After I fought Brador, I, for whatever reason, thought, let's jump down. So I immediately jumped down, cleared out the whole area, and didn't even know that you could. I didn't remember that I could cross that bridge and that there was another cave. So I actually kind of backtracked and couldn't find my way because I had just skipped all of that.
Yeah. Huh. But if you decide to go the other way, there's a path upward that kind of leads into this building that kind of a little bit reminds me of the boat dock from Central Yarnum. This in the guide, the old hunter's guide, which I've got right here. It's really good, although kind of costly for what it ends up being. They call it the Parasite Farm, which kind of gives a little bit of a lie to people who call this a fishery. No, this has been adapted for a different purpose.
Well, at one point it was definitely a fishery.
Yeah.
But even if you're not paying attention, it's very easy to think that these things on the ground are fish.
They're silvery. They have this white otherworldly glow. There are no fins and tails.
Yeah, just like fish.
Yeah.
But they're actually these slugs, which are either came from the inside of Kos, or are just attracted by Kos. Like I love the idea, and there's nothing in the text to support this, but I love the idea of Kos washing up on the beach. Because we know Kos was dead when Kos showed up, so they started worshiping Kos as Kos was dead. Right. And just slugs starting washing up on the beach, and then it's lousy with slugs. Like I've because it's one of the more horrific things I've seen on TV. I've used this as a reference for multiple of our shows, but there's like a Discovery Channel special on this island called Christmas Island in Australia that every 8 years or something has a crab year. And the entire island gets covered with crabs, these non-edible, angry, shitty crabs. And they're just everywhere. Like they show people you have to check your shower to make sure it doesn't have crabs in it. They show people, there's a ditch, or the roads are slick with crabs from them being run over. They show people wearing flood pants with buckets, just bailing ditches of baby crabs, hundreds of thousands of baby crabs that look like those orange Halloween spider rings. And I love the idea of it. Just one day, a couple slugs wash up, and it's oh, that's weird. And then the next day there's a couple hundred, and then there's just slugs. It's super, super creepy to me.
Yeah. Funny thing about Christmas Island, the top level domain, most countries have a TLD, is .cx, which is most famous for Goatsy.
Oh, hey.
Yeah.
Every time I brought up Christmas Island, it's just my way to trick listeners into looking at a picture of a man holding his butt open. So it's all an elaborate Goatsy con. And not the elaborate Goatsy con we threw at the Meredith Hilton, which is the annual gathering for Goatsy enthusiasts.
Man.
That gag's a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
So something that I'm a little bit kind of confused about, not confused, but so the idea that these would be phantasms kind of occurred to me, right? Because we find out about these through different ritual items that get us to eyes, One of the augurs of Abritus is you use that by kind of crushing one of these phantasm things. They're kind of implied to be these annelid like creatures, that are from beyond. Whether or not they come from inside Kos or from elsewhere, they're kind of created wholesale from her presence. Any of those kind of things, I'm not quite sure. What do you think of the idea of this being a hatchery? These parasites, whether or not the Kos parasite is kind of a fresher version of these phantasms, and whether or not that is used in kind of creating some of the enemies that we're going to find at the bottom here. Does any of that ring true to either of you?
So are you saying that these are maybe baby versions of the snail women?
I don't know about the snail women. I think that maybe this is probably implanted into them to make them that, or their presence kind of involves or is a sign of the corruption that turns them into these snails.
The whole fishing village is infected with the spiral. So, I mean, I think we all know how the snail women showed up. Which is for people who that's Uzumaki.
Yep.
I don't know. They're kind of all-purpose snails, right? Because they're all-purpose slugs. Because one of them's used as a torch, too, in an earlier section, which I saw from Richard's video talking about this. So, they can do a lot of stuff. I'm into the idea of them being harvested, but to what end? Right? They're not just for. Is it just that these people, because they got cause on the brain, more slugs equals more good? Is it to infect people? Ultimately, these slug or these snail people that's the goal. They are somehow closer to cause or closer to this enlightenment than the fish people was. I that's the only part. I'm fine with the idea of them mass manufacturing this eldritch little tiny creature because I like that, but I don't know what the end game is or why they would be doing that. Do you have any ideas for that, or do you have any thoughts on that, Lobos?
I actually was not nearly as aware of those little slugs that you're talking about. I mean, I remember seeing them in piles and stuff, but I didn't recall seeing it as a torch. Where is that exactly?
It's in the lighthouse, or it's in the little house where you find Simon.
Okay.
Which I didn't notice it either. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird detail. The person we had on the first episode, Richard Pilbeam, who we had on the first episode on the DLC, does these YouTube series called Bloodborne Up Close, where he just kind of does this really, really exhaustive, and I mean that in a good way, examination of the scenery and statuary and kind of enemy details of different areas. And one's being burned like tallow.
Interesting. Well, it's very cool. That's probably my weakest point in running through Bloodborne is a lot of times I'm on my mission to get good at the bosses and do my challenge runs that I catch up on kind of the details from other content creators. So that's really cool. For me, I saw the littler slugs, the smaller slugs, and they kind of brushed past me, and I went immediately into kind of examining the snail ladies that appear kind of later on.
Yeah. I really like the details. So down at the bottom, they're piled. This place is piled with slugs, as a fishery would be piled with fish. But up here, up at the top, they're kind of dried out, and we even see these husks of shells that have been abandoned up here higher. So I don't know if that is proximity to the sea or if that is just the idea of without moisture, these things desiccate as they would.
I think they look like they're supposed to desiccate, but I like the idea of whatever was inside those shells making their way out to sea. Ultimately.
I mean, we see them. We see them without their shells.
Yeah. But I mean, that being their ultimate goal, rather. I know we see not all of them go out to sea, but that being, they're going to go join, Mother Kos, or the idea of Mother Kos or what have you in the sea, which still has this kind of tie with enlightenment and insight.
Yeah. So this is kind of a 2-level area here. We have a shortcut back to the lighthouse, and that lamp is very useful. But over here we have these fishmen mages who are kind of sniping across this bridge as the melee the melee fish come and get us from short range. This is a very difficult encounter I found, specifically because I can't really I've never survived the fall.
Yeah.
The first time you come in, there's that bridge immediately, and if you try to cross it, about midway, one of those melee guys kind of catches you in the middle, and you have to either, fight it or kind of back off. And if you decide to stick in that area, then off in the distance, one of those lightning mages kind of gets an eye on you and starts throwing spells your way, and it makes it pretty tough.
Yeah. And the spells in here, I felt like in the above area you could be under a roof and protect you, but here, we're under a giant roof, but it's like those weird like caves where it rains. I know that's not exactly what it is, but it had that feeling to it a little bit to me.
I get the sense that you had more trouble with these casters than I did, Gary.
I think I did.
Yeah, I just
probably did.
I saw them as a wrinkle, but they never really stymied progress very much.
Yeah, no, part of it is because I didn't, on my playthrough, even though I've advised doing it, I didn't go back and kill Brador until, and I went and did all the wrap-up stuff after the game. So many of the encounters with these lightning things coincided with encounters with Brador. And all it takes is getting hit by one thing you're not expecting while you're like distracted, doing a hunter fight to mean that hunter can kind of stun lock you into death. Mm-hmm. So the lightning a lot of times meant getting killed by the bloodletter.
Okay.
To me.
Yeah.
So that's probably why they are more obnoxious to me. But I could have gone back and killed Brador. It was just my weird, my exploration heuristic, which is to finish off a path before I go back. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to go as far down this path as I could before I went and did kind of wrap up stuff.
Yeah.
Even though that's not best practices. Let's talk about these snail ladies. Because we've seen one before.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, which is super like amazing. Like once you kind of figure out that's what this is, that's where this came from. For cool foreshadowing. It's really on the nose foreshadowing. It's literally just like a thing from the future falling on your lap.
A thing from way back in the past falling in your lap.
Yeah, it's the future of your play, but way back in the past in real life. It's so cool when you finally see those and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I saw.
It all comes together now.
Yeah. And these things are great. These things creep me out really well. I like that the fishmen have kind of male characteristics and the women, all the snail creatures are women, which is this weird idea, like whatever transformation is happening seems to be kind of split by gender. In this, like whatever the curse or corruption or like closeness to cause or whatever we want to call what's happening to this village seems to affect the different genders differently, which is just kind of like a weird little wrinkle and kind of detail. And that the ladies are snails. It's this kind of it makes me think like, what if they're here? What if that's where like some of the parasites are coming from? What if this is a farm in that it's like a birthing kind of area. Yeah. And that's why these snails are laying in piles of these slugs, and maybe that's where these versions of the slugs came from.
Oh, it's like their birthing pit?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the fucking brood basilisk from the Shaded Woods.
Yeah.
You just pick up a desiccated slug and you say it was perfect in every way.
Yeah. Yep, I had a slug. I just had this thought of like and this is not says nothing about what I think about real, ladies in real life, but the idea that they're kind of like they're less mobile here, and they're really concentrated in one area. They're not sent off to like protect the village or anything. They're all really concentrated here to either work or be this kind of production line for these slugs. This is a detail I ended up really liking and creepy to me.
They're super creepy too because they have this long flowing hair, and because they're moving by crawling, they're kind of like Samara from The Ring. Or from Fear, a little bit, and the fact that they come at you, and down here when they have their shells, they're not really that much of a threat. And later on, when they're kind of unencumbered by this, they're far more mobile than you would expect them to be, and actually probably marginally more mobile than the fishmen themselves too.
Yeah, just like get rid of that shell.
Yeah.
It's like I used to have hermit crabs as a pet. Every once in a while, you'd like wake up and your hermit crab would be outside of a shell, and it would be like,
"Oh my! Please knock on my cage before you."
I wish that he would knock on his cage to let me know he was like he needed to hang a door like a necktie on the outside of his cravatat or something because
cravatat.
Because it's disgusting. It's like when you see when you have a beloved pet and it does something like gross biologically. It's like how I feel about dog boners. Like I like dogs and then like they get a boner and I'm like, ugh. Like I didn't want to be reminded of that part of you. This like biological part. It's like that. Like hermit crabs are super cute when they're just like two little eyes and big claws, and then when you see what's under the shell, they're repulsive nightmares.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, I can't believe I kept as a pet.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Like the insides of this are really creepy, and it's like not meant to be seen.
Yeah. That's how I feel about animal buttholes, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. I think that is probably the dividing line between man and beast, is that man decides to cover his butthole.
Yeah. Way into it. Like what a good thing that humanity's done.
That's a really good thought technology. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm way into it. Even if it was just like a pasty, like I would still be into it. Like anything that just takes care of that, because I don't need that in my life.
But yeah, the fact that this is a farm is super unsettling, and there's just so much life teeming at the bottom of this.
Yeah. We can go into this little tunnel where there is we should deal with what's under down the well.
You can get there from here. There's another kind of overlook to get to the to see the lug on the beach.
Yes.
Off to the right there. And as you kind of go through, you have these access tunnels that are full of the shellless ladies, right? The snail people that are kind of leaping at you by the power of their arms and I guess their pseudopod. I don't know. And there's there is a series of drops that you can get to that kind of gets you into this radial chamber that has a gigantic fish man kind of wandering around in circles beneath it.
And this is the way you want to take, because this way you can deal with the winter lanterns that are on your way here, rather than having them just kind of preside over the fight, which is the worst possible.
Giving you the frenzy.
Yeah, giving you the frenzy. We don't need to talk about winter lanterns anymore. We've talked about it a lot, but this is the first time we've had Lobos on for Bloodborne. What's your frenzy take? What are you good with frenzy?
How do I feel about frenzy?
Yeah,
it's I mean, it's definitely different. It's one of those things where you can go prepare for it, and it's not as bad. You can get frenzy runes and the correct frenzy gear, but usually I'm playing through the game pretty quickly, so it's just like a blood vial drainage mechanic, basically, where you just even if you're doing well against it. I have a much better time with them now. Since I got better at parrying them, because you can just parry their grab. Oh wow! And
I didn't know that.
If you time the riposte correctly, if the frenzy goes off while you're in that animation, it actually doesn't deal damage to you.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It's a little hard to time, and actually not having frenzy resist makes it easier because you'll pop faster. Oh, but yeah, if you can manage to line that up, it's a lifesaver.
Wow, that's really risk reward.
Yeah, yeah. If you get grabbed, it's just we'll try next time.
We'll see you again next year.
Yeah.
Huh. Oh, that's pretty sweet. Like I didn't realize that as a thing. Yeah. And the idea of them as a blood vial tax is pretty apt too. Like I had a harder time with them than that, but if I was just running through, that's what they would be, for sure. You're making your way through these and hopefully killing the winter lanterns here, and you get this that circular chamber where there's a fish man, but there's also a fish man clinging to the wall above you. Who a rare, it's kind of breaking the rules. Like you can't hurt him. He's immortal until he decides to activate, and you can't trigger him early or pull him or anything like that. Because what they want to have happen is that you fight one of them, and then when it's kind of about halfway done, the second one pops in, and you have to fight two fish ogres at the same time. Which is really, really tough. I didn't manage actually to do this on my playthrough, but again, I was kind of rushing. But I just, I was like, I looked up what I was missing by not doing it, and was like, I'm not going to end up using that weapon. I can read the description online.
Yeah. You know what this reminds me of? The giants beneath Black Gulch in Dark Souls 2. Yeah. Just this mini boss encounter that is not labeled as such. But yeah, I did not do this either. And the reward, the weapon that you get, the Rikuba, I believe, is what it's called.
Rakuyo, I believe.
Rakuyo,
yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, Rakuba.
Rakuba. The Rakuba.
Good engineer.
That is a very specialized weapon. Like you really have to be up there on your decks. I'm not sure where that stands in the prerequisites amongst all the other weapons for the skill requirement. But yeah, this is the weapon that Maria used against you.
Yep.
and used when she took part in the terrible violation of this village. When we talked last episode about how Maria is the closest thing this game has to a sympathetic character, like this is Exhibit A. And that is at the very least, she shows other signs of repentance, mostly that she has signs of suicide when you run into her. But also, in the white item description for this, it talks about how she lost her taste for blood and cast this weapon off in disgust.
Yeah.
And,
down the well at the very site of where she was at. Like she did not continue she kind of laid down arms.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I feel like she was complicit in this. Like she was Gurman's apprentice, and the church did this, and Gurman did it. Like in the trailer for this, it shows like Gurman walks into the village in the trailer for the old hunters. Like, but she's decided that not for her. Like she's going to try to repent, or at the very least, not doing murder herself in order to not to kind of deal with this guilt.
It's kind of funny because that casts her kind of warden like status in a different light too. Like if she was there attempting to take care of them. Of the kind of the results of the research that was done here. Yeah. In the clock tower, presiding over the research hall, and was like an actual benevolent figure.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because of the chronological weirdness of the DLC, whether she was warden of the research hall before or after the fishing village incident. It would have
had to have been after, because all the research was predicated on what they found here.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
That's true.
Yeah,
and it was the church that did it too. Like right now, we're firmly in like Bergenworth as a college territory.
Yeah, before the split, or at the very at the point of the split. Yeah. This encounter is really hard. I didn't do it. Mike had said earlier that Shaman Bone blades do the job, which is
they'll fight each other and beat each other up good.
Yep, and you can just watch.
Yeah,
you can just doom it, pick up the scraps. Yep. Another detail about Maria that we I don't believe we mentioned last week, but I want to make sure we hit here. Also in the item description for her weapon, it straight up states that she is a distant relative of Annalise.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't bring it up last time. I had it on the mind, but like the more I think about it, and we'll get into this when we get into kind of wrap up thoughts, like the less interested I am in Cainhurst's connection to all this stuff. Like, I can't care that much. I'm just not that like Cainhurst is really cool as an area and has like individual stories within it that are really neat, but the way it fits into the grand scheme of the game, I'm not that enthusiastic about. Like finding the connections of like, oh, like this person actually is from Cainhurst and this person is actually from Cainhurst. Like it just doesn't feel like it adds up to much. Yeah. Which is, it sounds negative, but it really is just about how good the DLC is and how it presents like a simpler, better story to me.
Yeah. It definitely gives a bit of a chronology to it though, because she abhors blood arts, and Cainhurst had blood arts, at least if you believe the item descriptions, because of a result of somebody defecting from the Bergenworth, after they found the blood in the labyrinth. Either that or they had it because of a Thumerian connection. Like the idea, I think that it actually enriches some of this, which is that old ones are not as rare as we are led to believe by their monumental status inside of the game itself, and the fact that we are looking at not just different factions within a city, but different cultures entirely kind of getting their contact with it. So the fact that she kind of knows what's up with how awful all this stuff is and actively decides not to use it. Most of what we see here actually with Simple Gracia, with Simon and his bowblade, and then here with Maria and her and her weapon, which actively eschews this advantage that she could take, is people taking this moral stance against these things that could give them an advantage, but they don't believe in.
Does the fact that there's like I got two ideas from that, but I'm not sure how they're connected. So like I got you saying that the that her connection with the Cainhurst and stuff suggests that these great ones are not rare, which I agree with, and the DLC does that. I don't think that's additive. I don't think that's makes for a better story, but I think that is the suggestion to it. But I don't understand the connection between that and people choosing not to use weapons that would give them an advantage, unless it like the idea is just that it ties into the pursuit of knowledge as damning and cursing.
I think that it really is just her motivation because she knows what happened with her lineage behind her, because of the pursuit of blood arts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see it. I think it's less cool that great ones are just everywhere. That it's that there's just kind of like, oh, we found him in the labyrinth. Oh, we found him in the fishing village. Like, I think that's less cool than more cool for me, at least. Like,
I don't know. Like, I see the fishing village as an extension of the research that they started when they broke into the labyrinth and found it out.
Yeah.
Like, I can see that still being the inciting incident, and I don't think that takes too much of the impact away from what we find later. Like, I think that this is, the point of no return.
I don't think it takes the impact away. I just think it's stronger.
Oh.
Like, I just think it's a cooler, like, and it took me a little while. This is getting into weird wrap up thoughts, like a little bit early, but like, it took me a little while to figure out part of what was causing some of my apathy for Bloodborne. And it really is, and this is going to sound like a joke because I hated playing through them so much, but it really is the chalices, which I just don't think, like, the chalices and Thumerians, I can't get invested in. I don't think it's that strong of an idea. I think like cool things came out of it. Like there are tons of cool ideas in Bloodborne, but the kind of the lore community kind of getting really in the weeds about like, oh, this person might be Thumerian, this person kind of has a little bit of a Thumerian look to them, etc. They might be descended from, like, I just don't think, and this is a really simple way to put it, and it doesn't sound, but I just don't think the Thumerians are cool. Like, I don't think it's that interesting as a thing. Whereas all of the stuff with this fishing village with like a dead god washing up on the beach and this, kind of village getting, under its thrall and worshiping it and then being taken advantage by these people in pursuit of knowledge. Like, that fires my imagination up. Like, that's a really cool story that has, it has a beginning, middle, and end, and it's not needlessly complicated. Like, when you start kind of tracing ties to Annalise, like, it starts feeling needlessly complicated to me. Like non-additively. And your mileage could vary, and people who are listening mileage could vary, and guests we've had on the show, like, I know there are people who are really into that stuff, but that's part of this the reason why, like, I feel like with Bloodborne I'm less interested in following these little tributaries than I am in the previous Souls games.
I'm definitely not like treating this like, ooh, what's happening in Vinheim kind of way. I like the idea of a precursor race that we find just a little bit about. Like, just take all the gameplay away from the chalices. The idea that there is this labyrinth that is just kind of this oubliette for these ancient and profane ideas that are just down there waiting for the taking. Like, the idea of digging too deep, that is kind of ubiquitous throughout the series. And that whole thing, again, a contact from a great one from a different direction, this time from ground instead of from water. And all of those kind of just like, anytime humans meet great ones, nothing good happens. So I kind of see it all as additive in that way, which is, it's just more evidence of what happens. And I agree that the Fishing Hamlet story is there. I like the idea of Maria having this personal story of kind of knowing what happens as a result of this pursuit. And kind of motivating her, giving her that kernel of that dissent, which, given what happens with her and why she's trapped in this dream, like, she was complicit in it. She helped out, but, after that point of no return, making the ultimate sacrifice in order to be kind of the only decent-ish person here. Like, I like the idea of that connection being the kernel there, without going so far as to, analyze, facial structures and do like phrenology on 3D models.
I mean, I can see what you mean. I think it's really just coming down to like a headcanon thing, because like for me, her kind of throwing down her arms at this act is not necessarily made stronger by her knowing where it goes. Her way, like, her having seen it all before, she could also just do it because, hey, it's not right to try to scrape the inside of people's skulls for eyeballs. Like, that's just not, it doesn't have to be like, hey, I know because I've been here before it ends poorly. Like, I don't know if I feel like it takes away the fact that it makes it feel like she's choosing not to do it because of consequence rather than morality. And like, as opposed to, and that's kind of the difference in how it feels. I mean, we don't know. I don't know if there's anything specifically that says why she did it other than that she got disgusted with it. But like, if it's just like, it makes her feel less like a decent person because it makes it feel like she's afraid of the downfall rather than just being disgusted with herself.
But it gives her a motivation. So there are two different disgusts that are happening here that actually lead to it being a morality. First, she casts the weapon into the well. Right. Mm-hmm. And also she refuses to use blood arts, even though she wields this weapon that is from her ancestry, this thing that, that is not powered by her own blood, like the Chikage is, right here. Like that leads back into like, oh, like the good people here tend to eschew the thing that does more harm and the advantage that does more harm in the name of getting something more efficaciously.
Simon's not a good person. Like Simon was a bigger murderer.
Yeah, but I think that he's
changed his mind.
He's changed his mind, but like like again, there's that kernel there. Maria is not a good person either.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it just like if she had just thrown away her weapon, like let's say it wasn't a weapon from Canehurst, it was just a weapon, and it was just like the lore was she threw away her weapon. I'm really sorry if this is terribly boring.
Very interesting.
I apologize for. I mean, I feel guilty for not including you in this. It just that popped out. It's going to bubble to the surface. But like if the lore had just been like she threw away her weapon in disgust over what she had done. And there was nothing about saying it actually traced its way back to Canehurst.
That would still be cool, but there's also this other thing in the text that lends that builds into her character more.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't. I don't feel like it adds that much. I mean, just for me, like again, it comes down
it's
to
still
like,
there.
No, I know. I'm not arguing it's not there. I'm saying I wish it wasn't. I wish that these little ties to kind of connect everything to Annalise in the game feel sloppy to me. From a like feel sloppy and unnecessary, like narratively and character development wise unnecessary. I know it's there. I'm not arguing that's not there, and like I have to live with it. It's there.
I just so much of the time we say like, oh, if it doesn't contradict what's in the text, then yeah, like that's that's there. Like it then you can go with it. But like it's hard for me to ignore it, and I think that what it comes down to is just our individual preferences regarding like the idea of the Thumerians. I think we're both against the execution.
Yeah, we agree on that. And I'm not pretending it's not there in terms of my headcanon. I'm just wishing.
Yeah,
like this is just me. It's a wishing well, show and tell. Yeah. While when you're talking about blood arts. Before we got in that distraction, I thought Paul Blart Blood Arts. That's something. I watched Paul Blart Blood Arts.
Did you write anything else down?
No, that was it. I was just thinking about that movie, like Paul Blart Blood Arts.
Oh.
Anyway, I think we can also probably agree on the end of this DLC and this boss fight. So let's move to that. And again, Mike, I'm really sorry for that.
No, it's stuff that I've never really. I don't piece these things together like that, so it's very interesting to listen to.
Okay, well, I'm glad that it is okay for you. I feel bad for not including you more in that, but I hope it's okay. The pathway to this boss is great.
Yeah.
The non like these kind of worshiping, creatures down this tunnel kind of knelt over and worship. It reminded me of the pathway to Nito's boss fight.
Yeah.
Also, they'll die if you roll through them. So you can just have a rolling jamboree.
So they share one characteristic with pottery.
Yeah, exactly. At least one. Well, snails are kind of like human pots.
Organic.
Yeah. Snail people are like human pots.
There we go. Is Pepper Potts? Will she crumble if you roll through her?
Yeah, probably. She'll crumble if you break her heart.
It's her one weakness. Also, she has bird bones.
Yeah. But so you head down to this beach. We're finally at the beach with the giant white beached thing, and we get to see this little cutscene here, which is pretty amazing and awesome.
Yeah. So we get this shot of this wilted thing on this small little cove almost. Like this is not like a full beach. It's not a coastline. It's like an inlet almost. And we haven't really commented on it, but the moon is like kind of shattered. There's this shadow across it that kind of has this spider web kind of feel. And from outside of this wilted white thing that looks like a big gigantic snail climbs this vaguely human body. It looks like a really jacked adult dude. And he kind of like looks at the moon and then turns and faces you. And that begins the battle with the Orphan of Kos.
Yes. Which, when he turns and faces you, he lets out this scream. And the way that the Orphan of Ko's emotes during the fight is one of my favorite things about it. Because it's rage, like inhuman rage, the entire time. And it's in the animations, it's in the kind of like the posture and everything. Like it's really this fury that we haven't, like, we fought Maria, which is also a dual fight. There's like Maria is elegant, and kind of choosing her moves, whereas the Orphan of Kaz looks like he's barely containing, this fury, and it's really, really great.
He's Batman and you're the Gotham Street Tough.
Yeah. Or or he's Wolverine and Maria is Batman.
I suppose, but I just mean, like, he's the orphan, and to his mind, you as the hunter, you fucking killed his mom.
Yeah, Johnny Midnight or whatever that guy. Jack Chill or Joe Chill.
Jack Napier?
Yeah, Joe Chill is the name of the guy who killed.
Oh, fuck. I wish I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's so dope. Yeah, but he kind of looks like a Resident Evil tyrant, except he attacks with this scythe that is kind of embedded in this bubbling placenta. That is on the end of, I initially wanted to call it a chain and then a rope, but no, it's totally organic. It's a line.
Yeah, it's like an umbilical cord.
Yeah, so he's straight up Kratosing you with this thing.
It's a really interesting thing I read on GameFAQs, and I can't give credit to it because I don't know where it's at. It was a weird random GameFAQs post. But the idea being that he kind of fights and uses a scythe like Gurman does.
Yeah, I read that too.
He saw Gurman, Gurman is the person who showed up and started dissecting his mom, and kind of imprinted himself on that. So this might not even be like this could be a greater organic creature kind of compressing itself into a human shape. Which is something I'm always going to go for in fiction. And we see that, like, when he changes phases, like, he bursts out, like, he transforms again like a Resident Evil enemy. Yeah, like he goes all One-Winged Angel.
Yeah.
On this stuff and get those, like, weird blood wings.
I love the first phase of this fight, and I'm going to be curious, Lobos, to hear your take on this, because to my mind, as somebody who's not really good at reading the patterns of these things, like, it feels like he's improvising.
So there's definitely patterns to it, of course. They keep making bosses more and more complex, so it seems like a lot of his stuff is erratic, and it really is. But one of the things that I just love so much about the fight is, well, the animations are very good, and he's got these really cool tactics. Probably my favorite tactic that I noticed was, he'll do this series of attacks that kicks up a bunch of sand if you're on the beach, of course. Yeah. And then he immediately charges through it. So all you can see is the sand get kicked up, and then the next thing you see is him charging through.
He pocket sands you.
Yeah. And that delayed uppercut with that scythe, gets you every time.
The timing on that is so impossible.
It's pretty obnoxious. And the nice thing is also, well, not the nice thing, but another little detail is, if you happen to dodge through it and you're on the other side of him, he'll kind of like slump it down on the other opposite side. So it just kind of does a little bit of damage, but it's just kind of that little insult to injury that's just, come on, I dodged that well.
This was a fight where I started off trying to fight it like a Bloodborne fight and, interrupt him and parry him and riposte him.
But she responds to you, like, you can do that.
You can do that. I found his moves pretty hard to read. Like, when you say improvised, I think that's a good way to put it, because he moves really quickly, he has a wide variety of moves, and I found the parry window hard to find. So what ultimately ended up, like, and this guy took me a bunch of tries, but what ultimately ended up doing it was me fighting him like similar to how I fought Maria, where I fought him like a Dark Souls boss and just dodged and attacked. And it took a while, but ultimately it was really, and I'm not trying to say my way of playing is better. I'm not saying it's more satisfying. It was very satisfying for me, though, to kind of learn his patterns in an old school Dark Souls way, of like finding his hurt boxes, finding, how many times, like, I had, Artorias flashbacks similar to Maria, where it's like, okay, this attack, he's going to do like 3 things. So I need to roll 3 times before I can get in, kind of start attacking. I guess he's super vulnerable to backstabs, but I never did it on him.
It's tough. I mean, I had to do a lot of trial and error to figure out where his backstab windows were. In the first phase, you can I worked on it a lot, and you can parry him pretty easily from safe distance too, as long as you have a pistol. A lot of his wind up attacks, it's just kind of a weird muscle memory with the timing on it, and like as soon as he starts to like he'll do a charge up, and then he'll do kind of like the double yo-yo attack, and as soon as he starts to swing, if you shoot your pistol, like it'll connect with a parry most of the time. So getting that timing down, and then just kind of figuring out how to deal with all of his other abilities makes phase 1 at least nice to stroll through.
Yeah.
But,
so we've seen a little bit of this duality, right? So if you consider like the main bosses of these areas, Ludwig, the Holy Blade, going into Maria, and then into this, like it's a little bit like Beast to Duel, and then straight Duel, one of the best duels in the game, if not the series, and then Duel to Beast again. It's this awesome little gradient.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and his second, I love those, and this is not really building on that, but just something I want to bring up is him throwing those little grenades.
Yeah,
because those are, he doesn't have pockets. Like those are definitely little like flesh sacks that he's pulling off of himself, and it's really disgusting them throwing these polyps.
I just the appearance, I don't know if it's because like this is showing a little bit of the upper limit of the technical graphical capability of the PS4 or their engine or what, but the way that the bubbling texture on his scythe works.
Oh yeah,
the you have these little polyps that are kind of clipping over each other, looks super unsettling, like in a way that doesn't feel entirely like intentional on their point, but it still works.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
Orphan of Kos.
Except, well, we didn't really talk about his second phase, which when you get him down to half health, like all Bloodborne bosses, he goes one-winged angel, and then he gets all of these very kind of just from my like devastating lightning attacks. Like he goes full kin, even though he is not a kin type.
The lightning attacks, are really tricky because they come from the land out towards you. You can I kept having kind of flashbacks to, or not flashbacks, but was worried that it was going to be like the Hydra fight and I couldn't go into the ocean. But you can go really far out into the ocean, which is the trick to avoiding the lightning fights. And that was definitely like a few deaths before I figured that out.
Oh, wow.
But you can fight him pretty far out into the water, and then the lightning attacks spread out to where they become pretty easy to dodge if they're far enough away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that took me a long time to learn, but ultimately I figured that out. But yeah, they're a real bummer. And and he also spends a lot more time in kind of places where you can't, like the windows to attack him in the second phase are reduced. He spends a lot more time in the air. And kind of jumping over you and jumping, landing, and throwing these polyps and stuff. So you have to choose your attacks more carefully. I still like the second phase of this fight a lot. Like I like this fight overall quite a bit. Yeah. But I could see it being more obnoxious if you were constantly getting hit by that lightning attack thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't have stuck out for me as much if it didn't one-shot me. Yeah, as badly as it did. How did this fight change for you when you did this with fists only, Mike?
I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm even good at phase 2. Like, there's still a lot of stuff that I just don't handle well in that fight. And when I was doing it with fist only, it was all about finding those backstab openings. As soon as he goes to phase 2, if you time it right after his transition, you can get a free backstab right there. If you time it right after he casts the lightning, like you can't backstab him while he's casting the lightning, but you have to like wait for the end of that animation. Boom, you can get a backstab there, and then just the rest of the time, kind of figuring out where his hitboxes are and where he hesitates the most, that you can kind of dodge to his back and get him there.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. If I had to fight him with bare hands, which I'm glad I didn't have to, because I was playing this. I played this all in one sitting, the DLC.
Oh wow!
And the it was pretty late. Like I credits rolled on this guy. I beat this guy at like 4:30 in the morning, and I still went back and fought Lawrence. No, that's not true. I fought Lawrence the next day. So I went up through Kos in one day, and it took a lot of tries. Like I found this really pretty challenging to do. So the idea of doing it in a challenge mode would have been is kind of unthinkable for me. But yeah, it's super good fight. I'm glad that the game kind of caps off with this. caps off with something that is this strong as a fight. When you kill him, he dies, and then this spooky ghost,
this spooky eco shadow man,
spooky shadow boy, one of the bad guys from Kingdom Hearts, shows up and hangs out on the body of Kaz. And I was like, what? Like nothing happens other than this, and I didn't notice it at first. I was like, is that it? Like, do I just go home now? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
But you kill the spooky ghost. And that gets you the Nightmare Slain.
Yeah. So
message.
what I've read is that is the sweet child of Kos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
I
had a friend who I was in bands with who used to always tell me he would troll me and be like, "Yeah, Gary, I'm working on the song. I want to hear what you have to think." And he would just play that every time, and it worked every time because sometimes he'd actually play a real song, but I'd say like 2/3 of the time he'd just play the beginning of "Sweet Child of Mine." It was really great. But yeah, so you kill that, and that actually does it, and you get this little narration at the end here.
And I'm going to cut that in.
Sweet child of Kos, returned to the ocean. A bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all that there is and can be.
And then that's the end. Oh, when you get the Kos parasite,
Yes.
as an item here.
So this is a companion to the Milkweed Rune. That kind of finishes your transformation. It's not very useful without that.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah. But this turns you into the liquidy Zoidberg without its shell kind of thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, broccoli boy.
Yeah.
One interesting thing about the Kos parasite, without the Milkweed Rune, it does increase your fist damage. But I did not use that. I didn't want to use that, but it's kind of interesting. Everybody was like, "Are you using the Kos parasite?" I'm like, no. But if you ever want to casually do a fist run, I don't know. Kos parasite can increase your damage.
If you want to take a cop out, yeah.
There you go.
A Kos out.
Kos out. Super Kos. You do that in like the Fist of Gradia and do a fist run.
Right.
Yeah. So something I love about this, and this might take us into kind of final wrap-up thoughts about the DLC, but this really kind of recontextualizes Maria's dialogue. A corpse should be left well enough alone.
I'm glad you brought that up, because you know how in Dark Souls 2 we talk about the Fading Ember rune, where it's like that is the mission statement. Like, I've never seen an item description that sums up the game. Like this world it's a dying ember, but perhaps that's its natural state.
Yep.
That is the line that sums up. That's the Bloodborne thesis line. Like a corpse should be left well alone is that's Bloodborne.
Yeah.
Like in a line. Like, you stop pursuing this shit.
Yeah. or even Brador's thing, like undying torment awaits those who pry.
Yeah, like stop doing that. And that's it's such an elegant and underlined 1,000 times version of the Lovecraft, the greatest, thing in the human mind is the inability to correlate all its contents. Quote. And it's such a good expression of that. Like, it's, as a Lovecraft game, the DLC and having that line in there is just like, oh, this is the best Lovecraft game. Like, they get it. Like they get it. Like, these are the consequences, and they're going to show you the consequences over and over and over and over of these people who are willing to do terrible things in pursuit of knowledge or pursuit of transcendence or something, and not just leaving well enough alone. Should have left things alone.
Dead dove inside.
Yeah. Yep. It's such a good line, though. It like I said, it's the Bloodborne thesis line.
Speaking of Maria's lines, there's some new dialogue from the doll. When you come back, similar to after you defeat Maria, she talks about a weight being lifted, and just...
Oh, good hunter. I can hear German sleeping. On any other night, he'd be restless. But on this night, he sounds so very calm. Perhaps something has eased his suffering.
With the idea being, this is the first time that Gehrman has slept in a long time, and perhaps this has eased his suffering a little bit. And we've heard that before. We've heard the evidence of his suffering.
Yes, we've heard him whimpering in his sleep. We should probably just throw it together in a sentence in case it wasn't clear, kind of this idea that Gurman went to the village, did terrible things to Kaz, and this curse is placed upon Gurman, but also on the hunters.
Yes.
That's this guilt that he's been wrestling with. How that necessarily, he's not in the hunter's nightmare. He's in the hunter's dream as a servant of the moon presence. How those two things interact, I don't know. It's like he's under twin curses. Again, that weird way that I feel like the DLC is narratively.
One comes from Bergenworth. That's the nightmare. The other one comes from the church. That's the dream. I don't actually believe that. I'm just throwing that out to be flip.
Yeah, I just don't like it's if he was the person and his descendants are the ones who are cursed. Does that mean that the moon presence is like his servitude of the moon presence is somehow part of this curse from Kaz?
I don't know.
There's nothing in the text to connect the moon presence and Kaz. Again, it's just like the DLC makes the main game feel sloppy in ways to me that, or the story part of it in the way it didn't. But this idea that like he did the sin, he feels guilty about it, you go through and kind of erase the sin and he sleeps better is such a pat kind of story that, works for me as like a, especially coupled with Simon's kind of heartbreak about like, oh, this has been, why should we do this forever? This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah.
It really works, and I'm glad that we were able to ease his suffering, because as much as he's a shithead, like it doesn't necessarily mean he deserves all the bad things that happened to him.
Yeah. And it's funny because hunters have so far been very associated with the church. There's the old workshop where they worked on their wares before kind of the cathedral sprung up around it. But kind of showing that this goes back to the days of Bergenworth, that there's always been this kind of class of enforcers that have kind of cropped up, and Gehrman as kind of the progenitor, because he was there for this first kind of sin, the idea of like the hunters being etched into history by this curse, by this villager, by the old ones themselves, because of this one act. It really kind of like reestablishes the central role of hunters throughout all of this as it goes around, and like kind of I don't know, like re-raises the main character's role as a hunter. Back to me, like your was like, oh yeah, like this actually means something, and that's why everybody's afraid of me, and that's why it matters that I'm trying to atone for or correct this.
A hunter is a proper noun. It's not just anybody who hunts.
Right.
It means a specific thing in this world. And that's the DLC. You can go do that cleanup stuff, which I did, but then you just go and play the rest of the game if you haven't done it so far. Do we have like wrap up thoughts on this? I'll go to you first, Mike. Did the DLC meet your expectations? How do you feel it stacks up with the main game or with other Souls content? Things like that.
The DLC solidified Bloodborne as my favorite Soulsborne game. Absolutely. The fights with Ludwig, just the whole reveal on that, and like I had the perfect first experience with that boss fight. It was if a designer was watching that, they would just be giggling with glee because I had the exact moments that they wanted. And then just I thought it was done at Maria, but then there's a whole area and Orphan of Kos, and I had not fought Lawrence by that point, so it was a phenomenal amount of content that was above quality that I had come to expect, I would say, for typical Soul stuff. They keep every DLC of every Souls game, I find to be the best content for that game, and it's no different with Bloodborne.
Yeah.
From is marking themselves as the best DLC people in games. I think.
Yeah, it's really good.
Like with I mean, I'm not not exaggerating. Like they're all home runs.
Yeah.
Like even Sunken King, which is probably my least favorite of the DLC things they've done, is still great.
Yeah.
Like it's still really, really good, and they learn from the mistakes of the main game. Like they try to rectify things. They actively try to make things, kind of address things. Like the DLC did everything I needed it to do. Like, oh, there are more play styles and there are more build options, and it answers these kind of lore questions and focuses on things that I found personally kind of resonant, as opposed to concentrating on things that I didn't. And it does everything I want a DLC to do. Like it's really up there for me.
Yeah.
From is just amazing at that.
Yeah.
I need to give one more shout out just to the music, the soundtrack, because I'm constantly blown away by their continued excellence in soundtrack choices and composition. I play my games now, all my Souls games, with like the sliders, like sound effects at like 5, dialogue at 7, and then music at like 9 or 10, because that makes the experience sometimes. For me, anyways.
No, the DLC music definitely steps it up. We've had some, we've been kind of lukewarm on the main body of the game's music, but the DLC, holy crap.
Yeah,
it's really good, and it just like that sense of, it's the thing we try to emulate in the edits, is that sense of bombast when a boss fight starts.
Yeah.
And the music, like, it's just it does add a lot. It's super additive. To that. How about you, Kole? You got to wrap up?
Yeah. So because I'm not good at video games, I don't really want to speak too much to the mechanical things. I feel like a little bit of the build stuff might have been just kind of like too little too late, especially with how far into the game they put that. I feel like for like a new build to be really viable, it needs to be kind of available earlier than that. And I understand, there might be a get good factor to that, but I'll focus on kind of the lore thing. And I'll say this has been incredibly satisfying for me. Because it answers questions that I didn't know I wanted answered. These are ends that I didn't know were loose, and it puts them together so well in such a wonderfully self-contained story that still has implications for everything else that we've seen kind of afterward. The hunters, I think, were a little bit of a footnote or a side note in the main game. Like, they were this omnipresent thing that just kind of was there, in the margins a little bit. And this idea that it's going to take their role and bring it to the fore and kind of show you where they've rested with these key figures, with Gehrman, with Maria, throughout kind of the history from this original sin that really implicates them, to the present day, presented in reverse order. I really have to like just marvel at the inventiveness of that choice to have you like traveling into the heart of this history. It's a great way to reveal those things that I don't know that I've seen done as explicitly and as intentionally as they've done right now. Like the prepare to die, like the Artorias of the Abyss stuff, you're kind of going back in time a little bit, and you're seeing kind of a little bit of the heart of the Abyss, which was kind of, again, a footnote, but still it has these big implications. I feel like that's what this is for this, and to liken this to the Artorias of the Abyss DLC is as big of a compliment I think I can give.
It feels similar to me in stature or kind of quality, but like where Artorias, when you said like it answered questions you didn't know you asked, like I feel like that too, where it's like the Artorias of the Abyss feels like it squared the circle, right? Like Artorias of the Abyss answered questions that were necessary to understand Dark Souls 1. This feels like it answers questions that, were footnotes or we didn't know were important. And like, I felt like I don't feel like some of the stuff I don't feel like I have a better understanding of with the DLC. Like, there are still parts from the main game where, like, we spend all the time talking about the ending thing, and we have our interpretations of it, but a lot of that is based on kind of headcanon and gut feel, as opposed to, like the moon presence is still not an explicitly laid out thing. Right. There are lots of things that it could have done to actually be the Artorias of the Abyss. What this did was something different, where it kind of took the places in the main game where there was the most spot for kind of interesting expansion, and it felt like it was invented upon that. Yeah, it productively camped there. Yeah, on the margins of things that like were footnotes and worked as footnotes, but like, what if they were really cool? And the thing I keep saying, and is that it feels like an alternate explanation for things. Like, it doesn't have to, but I think that's part of the reason why it does to me, is because it is stuff that was not. It's not answering questions that we needed to know. Right. It's giving more texture and dimension to this. Again, I'm going to love, like, ever since Dark Souls 2, and even Dark Souls 1 did this, but like the idea of this being a collection of short stories about these different characters, like any of the people and any of the factions that we've seen could be the center of their own thing, but this is just this crazy tapestry. This is a stained glass window that we would see in a cathedral that's built 500 years after this. And it just happens to be my favorite story. Like, out of all the short stories, like, this is my favorite one. I think this is the coolest thing that happened. And the thing with Maria and the idea of like Gehrman making this doll afterwards and stuff, like, that's the coolest kind of through line to me. Yeah. I love it. It's because I've talked about it throughout the whole season. Like, unlike you, like, I like Bloodborne a lot. Like, I really love Bloodborne, but it's not my favorite in the series. And but this made me like it a lot more because this, I mean, feels like it showed me like Bloodborne at its best. You know, like this is Bloodborne at its best, and it's good that it goes out on that note.
Yeah.
For me, like as we, you know, get done covering it with this game that we spent a long, you know, since what
the longest, it's the longest season we've done chronologically.
Yeah, like we spent a lot of time on, you know, just, and I've spent like just kind of living and breathing this game, and like I'm really glad that I'm able to go out on a note that's so high.
Yeah,
that like speaks to me so much. So yeah, love it.
And that's Bloodborne.
Yeah, super good. 7 out of 10. Recommended on sale.
Yeah, I would recommend talking about it for just shy of a year.
Exactly.
So where can people find you, Lobos?
On YouTube, you can find me LobosJR Gaming, Lobos Junior Gaming, or Twitch.tv/Lobos Junior.
Yeah. This is the first time we've had you on since you started doing that full time, I think. And or maybe
I believe it is. Yeah, I think Dark Souls 2 Hades Tower was last time.
Yeah.
That was some time ago.
Yeah, and then I'm glad that's going well for you.
Yeah,
it is. Awesome. Yeah, it's been awesome. Had so much support, and you know, couldn't do it without these amazing games that From Software keeps delivering to us.
Yeah, you I mean, you deserve it. So it is. You know, it's awesome that you're able to do that.
We've had a little bit of music there in the break, since we let Mike go. But man, so we're so grateful for Lobos' time.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite guests we have on, and is a crazy, super nice guy, and is just it is like brings something to the show like that we don't, you know, because we have people who are good at the game. I think you probably make the argument that he's like probably the best at the game.
Yeah, he's somebody who has kind of turned it into a craft, I feel like. And
to have the person who is maybe the best at the game be so generous with their time is really excellent. So again, you know, highest recommendation from us, and we bring it up all the time, but just bring it up again because it's still true. So that's Bloodborne.
Yeah.
We're done with Bloodborne.
That's so weird to think because like, we mentioned it, but like this is the longest we've talked about a game.
Yeah, this is you know, in retrospect, like you look at something like the Demon Souls season, and that was so svelte.
The Dark Souls season and the Demon Souls season together are not as much as this one was.
Yeah, they're like so quick, and this is just, we've really camped out and taken our time. I can't, like, I mean, we talked about it in the last one. I don't need to do a whole new thing of wrap up. I'm grateful for the chance to move on. You know, it is going to be weird to move on. I do, you know, I love this game, but I'm looking forward to tackling other stuff.
I thought about that when I was putting the notes together, actually. Yeah.
Like, it's just going to be cool to move on and do other stuff. I can't wait for Dark Souls 3. but I love these interstitial seasons, which are like, it's the little pieces of ginger, you know, pickled ginger between the sushi. Yeah. Literally, in this case.
We're going to camp out on that sushi notion here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So let's talk about the off season. Let's kind of ping pong and talk about what we're doing. And we're going to lay out the whole off season so people can, if they want to experience along, they can.
Yes. So this is going to be several episodes where we've got 10 weeks to cover. What
would be the theming of this if we had to call, if we have to come with a theming? Like, it's kind of like dark fishness.
I don't know, like, so it's, I would call this like, this is our kind of, so after boot camp, what you have to do is you have to like go and take a course that gets you reintegrated into society. Like they reteach you how to like balance a checkbook. Like it's skills for living, right? I think that this is the multi-stage parachute from Bloodborne back into thinking about Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Is how I'd say this. And I would actually write that all out and call the season that on the site.
Yes. Yeah. In addition to, but specifically focusing on a lot of Bloodborne stuff. Like this to me, when I look at what we're covering, it's like, with a couple exceptions, it's like the terror of Souls games.
Yes.
Like we're covering the horror aspect for this off season. So first episode that we're coming up, we're doing one episode. We'll call out when there's an appendix on two things. The Shadow over Innsmouth, the H.P. Lovecraft novella, and Uzumaki, the Ito.
Yes, the Junji Ito manga series collection. It's very it's not very costly. on Amazon if you choose to buy it there and use the link at the tip jar. We would ask you kindly to do that. It's like less than $20, and even though it looks intimidating, it's like 700 pages. I got through it in like 2 evenings, like 2 very time constrained. I'm also recording and playing games for the show evenings.
Yes, it moves really quick. It's also excellent.
Yep.
It has, and this is me, like, stand back when I'm recommending a manga. Like, that means something, because I don't like that stuff. For the most part, it's like Berserk in this. But this is incredible.
I'll say this, between Berserk and this, I am totally willing to take manga recommendations.
I'm willing to take manga recommendations from people who know that I like Berserk and this.
Yep, I suppose that's what I mean. Yeah, but
if you think based on that, like, hey, you might like this based on what you like, then I'm willing to listen.
Yeah,
because this is excellent, and we're going to cover this for obvious reasons. And by obvious, I mean it's haunted fish villages.
Yeah, they are both about seaside towns that have some horrible evil visited upon them.
Yes.
Yeah.
After that. Or go ahead, you take it.
Yeah, so after that, we're going to be doing 2 episodes and an appendix on Shadow Tower. Now, this is a PlayStation era kind of follow-up, spiritual successor / side series to Kingsfield. That kind of feels very Soulsy, like I've started playing it, and even though I am very bad at fighting, as you are wont to be at the very beginning of these, it definitely takes and leans into the horror side of things a little bit more than Kingsfield does.
Yes, this is supposed to be kind of the bridge series between Kingsfield and Souls in a lot of ways. I started playing it. I got a PS Vita.
Yep.
And had the controls mapped, but my right analog stick is fucked up.
Oh no!
And lilts to a direction.
So return that shit.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I bought it from Woot. Like, it was new, but it was from Woot. So I'm still trying to figure out the return policy on that. And there's all these guides online for like replacing it, but I don't want to open it up and replace it.
No, you bought a new thing. Like, talk to Woot.
Yeah. I'm talking to him. Like, when you just said that, like it was like my uncle or something like that. Like,
no, sorry.
Like,
that's for everybody. Like, don't take that shit if somebody sells you something bunk. Like,
no, I don't want to take that shit, but I'm also like, what if, to replace it, it's weeks and then I don't get a chance to. So maybe I'll try remapping it and just play it on my computer. I bought it now. I have it on just regular PlayStation as well. Yep. But what I want that second analog stick so I can remap the controls to make it playable.
Yeah, to make it into I did that tonight, actually, before we recorded. I set it to be like a twin stick shooter.
Yeah, it needs to play like that because I can already see it being good, but that needs to happen.
Yep.
But we're doing 2 episodes. We are doing an appendix, so if you have thoughts about Shadow Tower, lay them on us.
Yeah.
After that, we're doing a movie night, or a kind of, or like another book and movie kind of thing, where we're doing another Lovecraft special because kind of by popular demand. We're doing At the Mountains of Madness, which is the H.P. Lovecraft story, and the movie that was inspired by The Thing, or the movie that it inspired, rather.
Yes.
And so somebody specifically said, like, hey, I'd love to hear you guys talk about The Thing. Yeah. And I would thought, that's like one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Yeah. Maybe my favorite. Yeah. I'm down to talk about The Thing.
This was another thing that came out of the, along with the Zone, God rest its soul. Ronaldo and Philippe, that came out of the Ohio meetup. Somebody was like, oh, you should totally do that. And then on the fly, we pitched the idea of doing a double feature, a creature feature between those two. So we're specifically talking about the 80s John Carpenter version.
Yes. And the way that ties in is that they are both about kind of pursuit of forbidden knowledge leading to ruin in a lot of ways. And boy, am I excited to talk about The Thing. It's great.
After that, we're going to kind of take a dip into some modern indie stuff with Titan Souls.
Yeah. Yep. This is a game that originally was, I want to say you could play it online. It
was like a Flash kind of thing. It was part of a game jam.
Yep, I played it as the Flash version, and it's kind of what it takes from the Souls series is this emphasis on boss encounters. The gameplay, the mechanics are really different. In a perfect world, Salt and Sanctuary would be out, and we could spend some time covering something that is more directly inspired, but we'll find some connections there. Yeah, and and it's a fun game.
Yeah, that'll be one episode. The appendix will be kind of rolled in because it is kind of breezy. Like it's mostly a couple. It's all boss encounters, but with a lot of atmosphere.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll find some connections, but it's not explicitly an influence. Right. So it's not going to be like, we're going to call out like, oh, this is where, Miyazaki got the idea for this. Yeah. That's not the case.
The fact that it came out chronologically afterwards.
Yes. It's going to be like a Watch Out for Fireballs episode a little bit. After that, we're going to do an episode on 2 things. One, as people who listen to this probably know, I wrote a book that is Souls inspired in a lot of ways. called Souls of Darkness. So I want to have a chance to talk about that a little bit. I feel weird about it. If you think that that's egotistical and strange that I'm doing that, like, hey, I'm sympathetic to that attitude. But the thing I thought about was that if I hadn't done it, if there was just a Dark Souls podcast and this book came out, they would probably talk about it. Like if somebody else wrote this, we'd probably do it during our off season. So it's not going to be going through the book chronologically, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. And Nick Daniel, who's the artist, is going to be on that episode as well. And we're going to talk also about Labyrinth, which is the Jim Henson movie featuring the late David Bowie, part of our season-long tribute to David Bowie that we're doing across the network, kind of on accident. And that being one, Parts of the Chalices really remind me of Labyrinth. And two, the book Souls of Darkness is kind of the midpoint between Dark Souls and Labyrinth. So if those two things have a Venn diagram, it's the book. Yeah. Because it is equal parts. So that'll be a breezy episode. Again, not an appendix on that. And if the self-promotion aspect of that grosses you out, I apologize. But I promise it won't be gross.
All right. And then after that, we're doing something.
Cole's not convinced, but I promise you, Cole, as well, that it won't be gross.
I'm not sure who you're talking to with like you, the user involved. No, I know. I just what I don't want to turn into is like me interviewing you about this thing you wrote.
No. Yeah. It's like that's not the idea. Like I'm just going to talk about like some Soul stuff that came from it and talk to Nick about it because I haven't gotten a chance to like chat with Nick about stuff. But mostly it's going to be Labyrinth stuff.
Cool. Yeah. And then after that, we've got the thing that I'm most excited about for this, actually, which is Shadow Tower Abyss. So we're just going to knock out the entire Shadow Tower series in this off season. And this is one we do not encourage piracy. However, there is no English version of it. You have to get a fan translation patch in order to play it because it never came out in an English-speaking territory. And this has like really, really direct ties to Demon Souls specifically, and then inroads into Dark Souls from Demons.
Yes. So, I mean, that is kind of us encouraging piracy in this one case. Yeah. Like, if you can't play it legally, that's kind of a gray area. Because
I would feel terrible. So I feel terrible taking this game, but I also would feel like we would be remiss in not talking about this kind of direct progenitor to a lot of the ideas.
Yeah, it's not ideal. Boy, do I wish there was a way just to buy it. There's just not. So this is where that's the world we live in. So it's our job to live in it.
In this instance, our editorial integrity is outweighing the integrity of everything else.
Yes, our regular integrity.
Yes,
integrity classic. So that's the off season. Again, you can write in about any of those things. They'll probably be rolled into various appendixes. But yeah, that's what you have to look forward to. If you want to support the show, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv. That's probably the most direct way. We also mentioned the tip jar earlier. If you go to Duckfeed.tv/tip jar, you can make any of your purchases through Amazon, and we get a hefty cut of that.
Yeah, that
it's
goes
roughly 80%.
99%. I'm not sure how that, you'd think they would close that, but Amazon's a big company. We're in a blind spot. No, it goes, everybody who takes that extra step, you go a long way towards helping kind of cover the base expenses for us. It's great. We really appreciate it. There's another thing that is kind of a new development that that is like as of yesterday, after several trips and dealing with terrible bureaucracy. There's a post office box.
Oh, hey.
Yeah. So on the road towards becoming a legitimate business, that I want to have a place for people to send stuff that is not my actual address where you can come and slit my throat because I disagree with you about social justice.
Yeah, just find a place to send your pubes because you didn't like that I said that the fishing village was kind of like manipulating Appalachian poor people.
Yep.
So please send your pubes to this PO box. The P in that stands for pubes.
Yep, for the pube odor box.
Yeah.
Either Kole Ross or Duckfeed.tv, P.O. Box 27105, Cincinnati, Ohio 45227.
Indeed.
Yep.
So yeah, that's great. I didn't know you were doing that.
Yep. No, it is purely a we need something on official paperwork kind of thing.
Yes.
So, yep. Yeah. And also if you want to send letters or postcards and stuff like that, we will mention those on the show.
Absolutely. You can also do ratings, reviews, all that stuff. Thank you for sticking by us through the Bloodborne season. And things, it's always kind of a odd feeling to wrap up a season on a game, but thank you guys.
Yeah.
And we're really looking forward to joining you for the appendix season. I know that not everybody likes the in-between seasons quite as much, so if not, we'll see you back here for Dark Souls 3, but hopefully you come back for the off season as well.
Yeah.
And
we hope that you're as enthusiastic about some of these extra kind of topics as we are, because I'm super excited about going into this, even though it is going to be a lot of recording.
Yes, yeah, this is gonna be a harrowing couple of months.
Couple of months, yeah.
I think that's probably it, right?
Yeah. So until next time, let the pungence of Kos cling like a mother's devotion.
Corpse should be left well alone.
Umbasa.
Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
That was a fucking marathon of a recording sesh.
Yeah, that's long for this game or for this show.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for bearing with the technical stuff. We're going to speak again tomorrow.
What time?
Can it be 7 or sorry, can it be 4 your time as opposed to 3?
Yes.
I might want a little bit more time to take care of other stuff because usually my night ends after the recordings, whatever time we record. So I want to give myself some pre-show time.
Yeah. I have something going on at 9, but not until then. So
at 9 o'clock your time?
Yes.
Oh fuck
so
me! If we go to midnight, Jesus.
I can do a quick 5 hours on my legends. I'm sure there's 5 hours.
A quick 5 hour sesh.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that game has enough lore and stuff to.
No, it's actually a very scant.
Yes. I think it'll be a quick.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool, man. All right. Have a good night.
All right. Cool. You too.
Later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.